Not long ago, I got a comment on one of my videos that intrigued me. I found it to be really interesting, a really interesting theory, and so I thought more about it. And eventually, it led me to find evidence to, in my opinion, 100% debunk BV5th and Mike Victim. Now, if you don't know what these theories are, Mike Victim is the theory that Michael Afton is the crying child, also known as the Bite Victim, from FNaF 4. BV5th is the theory that the Bite Victim was the fifth missing child, aka Cassidy, was killed in the missing children's incident, was revived by the puppet, then killed again in the Bite of 83, and went on to possess Golden Freddy. As stupid as that theory sounds, Cassidy Victim, the theory that the Bite Victim is Cassidy, surprisingly does have some evidence. The problem with Cassidy Victim and BV5th is that they require each other to work, and BV5th literally has no evidence. And when I say that, I mean there's no evidence that the Bite Victim died, was revived, then died again. Nonetheless, there are people who believe both Mike Victim and BV5th, so today I'm going to be trying to debunk it once and for all. Although I'm probably not going to change anyone's mind, but hopefully you guys enjoy anyway. Before we start, I'd like to just say that it's going to be a rather quick to go through this theory, so I do have a couple other things I want to talk about, and so I will after I discuss this theory.
Let's join the bench. Prepare by making mess. Let's join the bench. It's what you say, I become obsessed.
So we all know the Fazbear Frights stories, right? Well, if not, let me catch you up. The Fazbear Frights books have a collection of 3 stories each, some of which are filled to the brim with lore for us to chew on. Some of them don't have too much lore. It kind of varies from story to story. These short stories, though, are there for us as the audience to read them, look into the details, and connect them with events or characters from the games in order to fill in gaps or explain new concepts that we didn't know before, such as agony and multi-possession, though I think that's for another video. Anyway, I think every Fazbear Frights book has an... I know. Every Fazbear Frights book has an epilogue at the end. These epilogues follow the story of Detective Larson, the Stitchwraith, which consists of two spirits named Andrew and Jake, as well as the rise of William Afton once again. Though he dies just because plot, and I guess there's not going to be a new villain at the end of these books, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be Eleanor, who's pretty much just baby. Anyway, Andrew and Jake are really the most important part of the theory. Andrew, we know for sure, is a Cassidy parallel, but Jake has been debated about a lot. Some people believe Jake is the Bite Victim, but most people who believe BV5th and most people who believe Mike Victim say he is a Charlie parallel, like the puppet. Even though there's literally only a single valid connection between Jake and Charlie, that being that they have a loving family. The rest kind of also works for him being the Bite Victim, but a lot of people don't really think twice about the fact that who Jake parallels actually affects the lore quite a lot. If Jake is representative of the Bite Victim, that means the Bite Victim 100% certainly can't be Mike. And I always believed Jake was the Bite Victim, but after evidence I discovered recently, I am now 100% certain and confident in saying the Bite Victim is Jake. But the new evidence I found for Jake being a crying child parallel, in the process of confirming that parallel, also 100% completely debunks BV5th, I think. I remember when I first watched Dako's summary on Coming Home, I remember watching him move on to the 4th Stitchwraith story, and I remember freaking out so much when I realized the connection between the crying child and Jake. I was so amazed that I made an entire video on it, a theory that has aged very, 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 very badly. Sometimes I still get comments on that video with people disagreeing with my theory, sometimes dissing me, and I'm like, man, I don't believe this anymore. Anyway, I remember Dako mentioned Andrew, and he said he can't see anything, and I was like, oh snap, because I remembered in the survival logbook, the Bite Victim states that he can't see. In Stitchwraith 4, Andrew is unable to see. Is this a coincidence? No. Some BV5ers latch onto this saying the Bite Victim has a connection to a Cassidy parallel, and this means they are the same person, but no, not necessarily. The thing is, Andrew has a connection to the Bite Victim from the logbook. Their whole conversation inside the Stitchwraith, Andrew and Jake that is, their whole conversation inside the Stitchwraith is reminiscent of the logbook. So the Stitchwraith is basically a parallel, or at least connected to the logbook. And both Cassidy and Bite Victim are connected to the logbook, obviously. Especially based on this, I guess. This means that they are both involved in the logbook. So either they are the same person or talking to each other. If they are talking to each other, that debunks BV5th, but right now, just based on this, there's no 100% definitive proof that they aren't the same person, at least that I haven't gone over yet. Maybe Jake is Charlie, and the faded text from the logbook was Charlie. Anyway, the underscore, back when he made his Golden Freddy video, theorized that maybe Crying Child and Cassidy's roles as Jake and Andrew were swapped. This is why Crying Child can't see and why the Cassidy parallel can't see. If this were true, it would debunk BV5th. But now, this groundbreaking evidence nearly confirms it. It's really unclear how the faded text knows everything about the bite victim. It is almost as if she's reading the bite victim's thoughts. Now if we go over to the 8th Stitchwraith epilogue, Jake is able to look into people's memories, meaning Jake has the same ability that the faded text has, and Andrew has the same ability the altered text has. Okay, so why can't we just end that there? Why can't Cassidy and BV, the bite victim, be the same person as the altered text, and why can't Charlie be the faded text? Why does it have to be a role reversal? I'm betting that's what a lot of you are thinking right now. Well, it's because there's a huge problem with both Jake being a Charlie parallel and with Charlie being the faded text. The Fredbear plushie. In the 7th Stitchwraith epilogue, the puppet shows up, and she makes this weird whispery kind of sound. Towards the end of the real Jake, Margie is described as hearing whispers just like these coming from Jake's room, which means that the puppet is who is responsible for Jake possessing Simon. How could the puppet appear in a story with a puppet parallel? That doesn't happen. Mike appeared in the real Jake when there was no Mike parallel. William always appears in stories where there isn't a William parallel. The Stitchwraith doesn't appear in the new kid because Golden Freddy is already there. Evan in the real Jake isn't really Crying Child. He's just a parallel to Crying Child. And also, you guys know the saying, like father, like son. I think that's what the real Jake is really about. Both Jake and his dad, Evan, are good people. Both Jake and his dad end up dying in the story, and both Jake and his dad are parallels to the Crying Child. Anyway, Jake can't be a Charlie parallel because Charlie is the one who saves his life. Not only that, the scene with the whispers actually is great at mirroring the post-Night 6 minigame of FNaF 4, where the puppet acts as the Fredbear plushie, saving his life. And we know this is Charlie based on both logic and what we just went over. Charlie saves his soul in the real Jake. We can assume she does the same thing here based on that, and based on the nature of her character. She wants to save the kids. Okay, so now we know that the Fredbear plushie in the post-Night 6 minigame of FNaF 4 is Charlie. The rest of the game, I think it's probably William, but yeah, we don't know that for sure. Whoever it is, the faded text cannot be the Fredbear plushie at any point in the timeline. Meaning at the very least, from what I believe, the faded text can't be Charlie, and it obviously can't be William. Why? Because in the logbook, the faded text asks, "Does he still talk to you?" with the Fredbear plush on that page. If the faded text was Charlie, she would already know the answer, since she was the Fredbear plushie, and she doesn't talk to the bite victim as the Fredbear plushie anymore. Then she would know the answer is no, so she wouldn't have asked that question. And if she were referring to William, that still doesn't make sense because the bite victim is dead, so William would have been unable to speak to the Crying Child anyway. So the faded text cannot be Charlie, and that's pretty much it. Since the faded text can't be Charlie, it must be Cassidy, and the altered text is certainly Crying Child for obvious reasons. So now let me resolve Mike Victim here. Based on everything I've said so far, Jake must be a bite victim parallel, since the Stitchwraith is a logbook parallel. There's Andrew, who is Cassidy, and there's Jake, who must be the bite victim. Jake being a bite victim parallel is not compatible with Mike Victim. And I also have one other thing to say about Mike Victim. Most people who believe Mike Victim believe that Cassidy asks questions as the faded text and also alters the text on the ratings for Mike to answer. But this does not make any sense. First off, if Mike was the Crying Child, I think Mike would have circled it with his red pen or something like that. But since he doesn't, there's absolutely no evidence that these questions are directed to Mike. Second, if Cassidy is the one putting those lines there for Mike to circle, then the "I can't see" line can't be true, because he's alive and he's physically using the book. He can see fine. So either Mike isn't the bite victim, or this line is a misunderstanding. And if this line is not true, then there's no real proof that the "it was for me" line was true. And if that line isn't true, then again, Mike Victim is not true. So either Mike Victim isn't true, or Mike Victim is not true. That's basically the outcome, making Mike Victim basically impossible. If I haven't convinced you, that's fine. You guys can believe what you want. But even if you disagree, you have to at least admit that I did bring up some good points. Anyways, I still have a few more things to talk about. I've talked about them on Discord before, and the thing I'm talking about next is something I talked about in my video on the new kid, but I want to bring it up again. Towards the end of the New Kid, when Devin sticks his arm inside Golden Freddy's mouth, God, that was a weird sentence. Golden Freddy bites down on Devin's arm. This seems to be a reference to the bite of 83. And Golden Freddy here attacking Devin doesn't make any sense unless this is Kelsey doing this, even further proving that Kelsey possesses Golden Freddy. And I wanted to bring that up because Kelsey is clearly a parallel to the Crying Child, and this would mean the Crying Child does possess Golden Freddy. His biting Devin's arm is likely further proving that FNaF 4 is the bite victim torturing Mike, since Kelsey is a bite victim parallel and Devin is obviously a Mike parallel. But he's specifically torturing him by biting him. Torturing him with a bite is likely a reference to in the games. A bite is how the bite victim died, obviously. That's why he's called the bite victim. In FNaF 4, he's torturing Mike for what he did to him. So showing Mike the main thing he got revenge for is not far-fetched. But the question is, why is he biting him in the arm? You might think it's just a random limb that they chose to bite in order to not directly steal it from the games, which I do partially agree with, but this actually happens a lot. In Into the Pit, Spring Bonnie bites Oswald in the arm, similar to Fredbear plushie similar to Fredbear biting Crying Child, especially since Oswald seems to parallel Crying Child with the fact that his dad becomes Spring Bonnie, which is the persona bite victim's father uses, and the fact that he sneaks out of the house at night, like what Crying Child does in Midnight Motorist. Plus, the bite in both situations was done by a yellow Springlock suit. But Oswald also has some similarities with Mike, such as him being brave and going to face Spring Bonnie even though Crying Child is a wimp and would never do that. Anyway, next we have Lonely Freddy, where Alec rips off the Foxy plushie's arm, just like how Mike rips off the Foxy plushie's head in the FNaF 4 minigames. Why does an arm always represent a head? And a better question, why are the stories it happens in so consistent? I mean, Into the Pit has it, and that's book 1, story 1. Lonely Freddy has it, and that's book 2, story 2. And the New Kid has it, book 3, story 3. Isn't that weird? Well, I'm still not sure about it, but my theory is that it was preparing us for a future story. Obviously, there's only 3 full stories in each book. The epilogue is not a full story. So, there obviously can't be an arm representing a head in the 4th story of the 4th book. So, that's probably why the arm representing a head parallels end at the 4th book, because the first story of the 4th book has arms being a major part of it. And that is a story about Foxy and a Mike parallel. And the rest of the stories where arms represent heads all have that representation involving a Mike parallel. I think this is supposed to show us that Mike has some relation to Foxy, which would show that Mike is Foxy Bro. So now the final thing I want to bring up is something I'm just going to mention briefly because this video ended up being actually longer than I expected it to, plus I don't really have much to say about this. I think we've all heard of the Evan victim theory. The theory was made by Wolfie 1740 Kingdom. The theory basically stated that the bite victim's name was Evan. A lot of people had a problem with the code used to find this. People say the code was inconsistent because the way you find the letter N was different than how you find the other letters. I don't really understand that logic, because especially considering the code isn't really that different. Finding the N isn't really that different. Plus, the code in order to find the Cassidy used numbers that were literally written by Mike, which makes absolutely no sense. But that code was confirmed to be correct, so I don't really understand why people say this code is bad. But anyway, there's been a new theory recently that the final answer, which says, "I'm scared," is a response to the question, "Do you have dreams?" referring to the nightmare animatronics. If you note the page this question is on, the "Do you have dreams" question, it is on page 41. If you replace the N with the numbers 4 and 1 on the Foxy grid, you get the letters D. You get the letter D. So instead of EVAN, you get EVAD. If you reverse this, you get DAVE, which spells out the name Dave. People have started theorizing now that the Crying Child's name is Dave. Dave is also the fake name that William Afton uses in the Silver Eyes trilogy. It's possible that William did have the Crying Child in that universe, and his name was Dave, and the reason he used the name Dave is because of his son, named Dave. But here's my problem with this. There's no telling for sure whether the Crying Child saw the nightmares at all, or had the nightmares from FNaF 4. And the "I'm scared" line referring to something else, I think actually does make more sense. It's possible that he saw the nightmare animatronics, but it's not really confirmed at all. I also talked to Wolfie, obviously the guy who made the Evan victim theory, and he said that he didn't believe Crying Child saw the nightmares ever. And I actually agree with him. It's pretty clear at this point that we play as Michael in FNaF 4. I've already made a separate video on that, which I might put in the description because for some reason most people don't believe that, even though it's so goddamn obvious. But anyways, I believe that it's Crying Child torturing Mike, as I said earlier. So, yeah, that's basically what I believe. So, if you want my thoughts on Dave Victim, I don't believe it. I think Evan Victim has flaws too, but the only reason I believe that is because I don't find it to be a coincidence that the name Evan was found in the logbook, and then a Crying Child parallel with a brother named Mike in the Fazbear Frights stories is also named Evan. I just don't find that to be a coincidence. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss for this video. If you disagree with my theories, that is completely fine. This is all just my opinion and my opinion alone. So if you want to disagree, I'm not going to ridicule you for that. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And stay tuned for my Fazbear Frights Book 9 summary videos coming out in a couple days. The book's coming out tomorrow, and I'm probably going to read the first story as soon as it arrives. And since I have no videos planned for tomorrow, maybe I'll just do a video just showing, yo, I have the book now. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, stay tuned for that video. It'll probably come out on the 7th of July because, I mean, I don't think I'll have enough time to upload the video tomorrow. So yeah, those summary videos will be coming out in a couple days. But yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Impulse7 out. Peace.